Okay, so the rains start again here. We're on, what, the 29th to the end of May. Three days per turn. Union units moving forward, in particular, a march here into Harland, which looks smaller than this, and while it's not right on the railroad, is able to threaten it in a way that is sufficient for what I'm doing. We did a cav probe into here and withdrew after failing. We didn't find anything elsewhere. Things were largely the same, moving some of these forces up. One round of combat here, the Union's having trouble. Now this is not rough terrain, I've decided, but yeah, we kind of got lucky on the die rolls, to tell you the truth. And also the positioning, because Thomas and Hood fired on each other, and that negated Hood's defensive fire bonus. He's not going to do that if he sticks around for a second round. Basically, the losses were equal, 3 each, which, you know, maintains that victory point spread. But the big problem is, one, the Confederates could just fall back, but they don't really need to. They're okay trading losses so far. Obviously, the Union has a larger force, but if we can keep the Union far away and expend their effort back here, they may not have the time to make it. And it doesn't look like they're going to make forward movement very easily, except through attrition. The river line looks like a nice fallback. I can pretty much drop to these spaces and make it so it's very, very difficult for the Union to cross through. It might be better at this point, but you know, they can establish themselves with a bridgehead. I believe, not sure, trying to remember the basic game rules on that. Right, they can establish themselves with a bridgehead if they have a better leader, I believe, which right now they do not. My better leader is sitting over with the Army of Tennessee, Sedgefield, which kind of means I'm not going to be able to make the push through here very easily. Facing Hood, Hood's good enough on defense to cancel Thomas out on attack. And that kind of means, well, I mean, the problem is my other guy, Hardy, is particularly good at defense. I'm not going to be able to bust through with him. So I'm just not positioned as well as I could be. Beating up on Hood might be a worthwhile task. Because Hood took damage in basically 2 different rounds and the intensity wasn't very high, there's no chance of him getting hurt here. But I'm having a hard time figuring out how to get through this line without grinding my way through. And now one of the big complaints with Johnston, he felt that he could hold the line in this general position, more or less along the river here. And his commanders decided he could not. And he followed his commanders, you know, advice on that. But yeah, this is no stick tape, but it helped secure the board. But yeah, this is a tough thing to get through, and you know, I just don't see being there's no easy outflank position out here. I might be able to bust my way across the river from this side, but I've shifted all my forces over here. And so, you know, I'd really be telegraphing my move probably if I do anything there. The question right now is, does the Union want to fight another round of this? And if so, they probably do not want to go in advance. They probably do want to, because their firepower gives them an advantage. The fact that they just keep, they're able to shoot from 3 wings at full strength on each wing. The entrenchment's not strong enough to prevent, the Confederates from perhaps taking more losses. The problem has been using the advance versus the stand with the amount of strength that we had. A diversionary attack might reduce the Union strength, the Union losses on the combat intensity. Of course, it also throws them onto a less likely to do damage fire chart. But I think we're at the point where we kind of just have to attrition the Confederates and accept that we have to do that. We better results out of the diversionary attack, and we get to stand here. We caused 2 casualties to our 1 over the course of the battle. Just by lessening the amount of damage that we're taking from the CIC, especially because of the rain, we're able to deal with this a little bit better. And, I think the best we can do is just keep grinding into the Confederates and try to wear them down by causing equivalent or slightly more damage to them. Force them back that way rather than in anything that involves clever maneuvering, because I've committed my forces in this direction and I'm blocked. And I don't see why the Confederates would withdraw, to tell you the truth. In fact, they actually have another corps over here that I could send part of it into play in one of these other sectors of the battlefield. I'm pretty sure this doesn't really exist because these guys are entrenched. Again, it could be fake. There could be just 2 real units holding those 2 entrenchments. And they could even be cav and artillery or something, if that's the case. All right, let's go over and see what the Rebs do this time. And a little bit of shifting around on the lines. Just, repositioning a little bit. But yeah, I am leaving him here a little bit longer. Is that wise? I don't know. Yeah, I really don't know. It is good enough terrain. The river line would be stronger, but I kind of like holding these 2. There's reasons for it in my mind, at least, even if the reality may not seem that way. All right, well, it's time for me to start making dinner, I think. Another Union cav probe discovered that they only have 4 points more cav, and I don't feel like the advantage is enough to fight it out there, so I pulled back. But I am going to launch another attack here. That'll be the same as the last time, except the weather is decent now. Oh, I forgot. I thought I had taken it, but I forgot to take the infantry point there. I took straggler recovery somewhere back here. And then this guy actually took a 2-point straggle, which drops him to 0, so he can't do anything until he recovers a point. In another couple rounds of battle here, the Confederates losing a total of 2 strength points, the Union losing 4. Not a good trade. Not something I can afford to keep doing, but I don't know another way to go through other than batter through. The problem right now is actually a lack of units. Over here on Schofield is part of it. That's 2 strength points here. I lost 2 on really a bad situation. Die roll-wise, the Confederates got a really good die roll against them. And I think that's it for the Union, but, again, I've got to get some more reinforcements into play. I took my replacement point into there. I've got another unit for the Tennessee. The Tennessee is getting quite large to the extent that maybe I do want to push into here, but man, it's so scary what's going on, and I'm using no finesse at all, but I can't afford to give up this rail line, so I feel like now that I'm tied down here, I just have to keep going. Yeah, it's a painful thought. And the Confederates feel like they didn't do much in their turn, but they feel that they're a little worried about holding her. Might as well fall back to the better terrain. But I want to do that until I start building entrenchments for them. So I actually sent a unit there. Otherwise, the Confederates are pretty much standing steady. They're like, hey, we're winning this whole campaign right now. All right. I just wanted to sneak one more in before I go to bed for the night. And that's where we're sitting. But the Union feels like it's really fallen to a bad position. And it's not like the Confederates feel like they have the best line they could possibly have. For example, if the Union's going to attack somewhere, I would rather have Hardee defending. Definitely not Polk. So, you know, it could be worse, right? All right, rain again, and the Union up to the same old tricks. Launching an attack here, cav probe here didn't get me anything that I wanted to fight, so I fell back. You know, I might try to go around if he's going to protect this side more. But the thing is, there's enough Confederate cav that, like, I think any chance for the Union to slip through with their cav easily isn't going to happen. So we're not going to see much there. But let's take care of the battle. The only way we can show the damage over the multiple rounds of the combat is really by looking on here. So the Union has taken 4 losses, the Confederates 3. Still not a great result. And you can see the Confederates are actually a good 10 points above the Union at this point. Remember, Atlanta's 25 points. So if I get that, yeah, it's worth it. But if I'm not going to be able to bust through, it's not doing it. However, I do think the Confederates are going to fall back behind the river. That puts the Union in a tricky place where, you know, yeah, I can garrison this or something, but I'm still not successfully punched through their line here. And maybe I can't punch through it. Maybe I got to probe and see if I can slip around behind and try to look for a different way around. Or maybe I have to pretend I'm doing that for a while and then try hitting through here again. I don't know. And here we have the resulting position, the Confederates having pulled back. Nothing else really moved at all. Now this is a lot harder. Crossing the river against an entrenched position, yeah, that's just not going to happen. And somebody else built the entrenchments for Hood. Hood's forces were disintegrating, and I can't afford to just stay there and take the losses, even though I'm getting maybe a slight advantage in victory points. I just can't afford the losses. So falling back seemed like a necessity. Multiple attempts with the Union cav to screen, didn't find much. I'm going for it. It's not good. The Confederates actually have more cav here than they have in the other space, but when I'm going in blind, I got to fight it. So we'll take care of that. Otherwise, we're seeing a sort of a repositioning. The Union digging in down here, and forces that were where? I think what we've seen is a shift of Union forces out of this space into that space is the net effect. What does all that mean? We're not sure. You know, it could be a repositioning or the attempt to appear to be repositioning. And you know, the Confederates can't really take their chance on either way. Right now, they've been able to maintain a very thin line down here. If the Union starts moving or appears to be moving forces down, I'm going to have to reposition my forces to defend a little better, or at least look like I'm defending better. You know, if all the cav's over here, we're not going to find out a lot. The problem is, no matter what, I didn't have 2-to-1 because this is rough terrain, and I kind of screwed up. Did a diversionary attack, thinking, hey, in the good weather, whatever. That ends up not getting me any losses. Well, no, I'm at 1-to-2 actually, and then the firepower worked out. Nobody hit each other. I do not want to stay here. I could stick around for another round. In fact, I kind of have to. I'm not going to launch an attack. The Confederates are not going to launch an attack. So that's all we got out of that. And it's the Confederate side of the turn again, and they have to decide how they're going to react to the Union apparently beginning that repositioning. Reaction is to do very little at all. At least apparently. Entrenched a little further here, but in actuality some forces did shift locations. What I'm looking at is I can actually give up Resaca and fall behind the river line. That'll tighten my line between here and here. And eventually the Union might be able to force me to fall back again, where, you know, nobody's got the capacity in this game to cross rivers. That's except at crossing points. That's kind of weird. Like, the Union definitely had engineers in general. I'm not sure that maybe Sherman was traveling so light that that he just didn't have them in the Army of the West. That seems very surprising to me. I'm pretty sure the Army of Tennessee had capabilities to cross rivers on their own, although maybe they relied so much on the gunboats earlier on that, like, they just didn't develop the capacity that, you know, the Union has, say, over in the 7 Days campaign when we played that. So here we have like bridge here that could get us around, but honestly, you know, it's going to be not impossible for the Union to circumvent this. And it's not until we cross here and get right on Atlanta that we're forced into taking Hood and all the problems with that. So I think I've got some capacity, even if I get forced back behind here, where I don't necessarily have to defend these spaces. I could defend the river kind of along here. I don't know how much better that is than defending 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces here, which looks pretty damn good to me. The only thing I have to do is keep some cav to protect against possible Union raids back there, whatever that means. Okay, just when I'm away from the game for a little bit, a couple hours here, I have thoughts about it. Depends on the game, you know. But in this case, I'm thinking about the Confederates being able to hold the line that they have for as long as they have. This is ahistorically long. And that's actually, to me, kind of a flaw in this particular design. It can be handled pretty easily, but essentially what happened historically was Johnston thought he could hold this line, but his commanders, including Hardee, who's pretty good, you know, throughout this campaign, and elsewhere actually, they end up convincing him, no, we can't hold this line, and that causes a fallback. Now, I think you can also probably hold this line. Once you get past here, it gets ugly. It gets really ugly. You're looking at, you know, the river line here, and then you've got if Johnston falls back that far, you've got the Hood rules and everything like that. Although there is here at Kennesaw Mountain area, another place along the tracks that you might be able to put up some sort of resistance, but the problem with that is this can be circumvented. So why give up this defensible position? And that's kind of the problem. Doing so is one of the blunders of the campaign in the game designer's view. Well, okay, that's great, but no player worth their salt is going to make the mistake that the Confederate command as a whole made, which to me means that there ought to probably be, optional otherwise, whatever, a rule that allows you to kind of simulate the fact that Johnston's command staff didn't have a strong feeling in favor of standing on that defensive line. And that may also occur down here. I'm not so sure how easy is this to hold? You don't need this, I think. Although pressure could definitely be put across the creek here. But I think you're okay defending a line around here. It's not as good a terrain though, overall. So you got like ridges here, here, not ridges, whatever, rough, here, here. This, I don't know. I don't know if that's rough or not. The map is so hard to read that I can't be sure. But anyway, you wouldn't really want to be here if it is rough. I played it out as not rough, but now I'm seeing these things. But are those things any different than these? I don't know. There's like this gradation, you know. I'm going with the roughs or these kind of things that are really heavily wooded and brown, and not there's brown and some woods in it. But my hands are just up in the air in terms of, can I figure out what this map is actually expressing? And again, somewhere or another, there's a list of all the terrain types or something that was put out, because these maps are fucking unreadable, you know. But anyway, yeah, you put some kind of rule. Now there'd be a couple of ways to do it. You could do it with pure scripting. Hey, he can stand on this line for so many turns and then he has to abandon it. That's really heavy-handed to me, but it gives you something that matches the historical campaign nicely. You could have some kind of cost for ignoring the rule, which gives you a little bit more flexibility. That's something like you would see in the CWB type games. You could see some kind of roll. Every turn, you know, calculate up the total losses taken on that line, or something else that would give you some kind of modifier and help limit the amount of time they could be there. You could make it just a flat roll, but that seems really kind of unreasonable, because then Confederates, under no pressure from a frontal assault, might give up the position, even though, you know, they might anyway because of being outflanked, and I'm fine with that. That's a possible situation anyway. But the idea of the command basically deciding, yeah, you know, we can't hold this. I think that should be a part of the game, either optional or not, in order to allow you to represent something. Because I've been here. I'm trying to remember. I'm here on June 10th, and I don't remember when they abandoned the line. What do we got here? May 14th. By May 16th, Johnston goes across the Oostanula, which is this. And, you know, he's abandoned one side of it. That's still defensible. But he falls back to Cassville, which is probably near Cass Station. Here it is, Cassville. And that's clearly not as defensible a line. Yes, it's rough terrain, but it doesn't have the river line to bonus it. So, yeah, a little bit of shift of Union position. Do I want to entrench there? You know, I don't. I want to keep things more mysterious, I think. Not really. I mean, if the Confederates want to attack me, that's fine. So they're still kind of in the position of, hey, I don't know what's happened here. But it does look like forces have shifted over. These are, of course, Confederates here. And Franklin, Spring Hill's got to be, I mean, this is Spring Place. Maybe that's Spring Hill. Anyway, it looks like the forces are shifting in this direction, which to me means the Confederates have to pretty much react to that. This could all be a ruse, though. I have to count that there's at least an army there. You know, he wouldn't have the entrenchments there, but it may be more than I think there is. I haven't seen any entrenchments here. I'm only seeing entrenchments where they were already in place, which means a couple of cav or something could be holding the line there. So there's no assurance that I haven't swapped forces out and then back in or something like that. The cav also pulled back. I just don't feel like I'm getting the kind of effect that I wanted out of it. I forgot to mention it was a heat turn. It's done though, because let's push this here and get these up there just in case I head out. Confederates pull out of Rasanka. You know, it's sticking out. Two spaces can hit it. It's not across the river. Let's get behind the river, cordon that off. We get the cav moving into place, and then some little bits of confusion going on in terms of things shifting. There's more force appearing to be down here. This is bigger because I was able to pull out of there. So, you know, the Union's now facing a, did I just, you know, by shifting, yeah, I gained this space. That would have been hard to take. But the river line is perhaps as important. I just did not like being stuck out here. Crossing the river is a pain in the butt. And if, as he is, Hardy is over here, it's going to be damn hard to dislodge him from the front. Normal clear weather now, and the Union continues their shift, taking Resaca and having what looks like a couple of armies poised to try to move across the river. But, you know, crossing the river into entrenchments where they're heavily defended does not sound at all pleasing. And here there's actually, you know, probably a couple corps. I don't know, because if there's two full corps here, there's nothing here, and the Confederates are going to have to do something. But well, this is definitely not where I would be expecting my attack, but that may mean that the Confederates shift and create a heavier weight here in an attempt, you know, to hope that the Union comes through. I don't have a whole lot of cavalry over here for the Union, so I'm not going to really be able to do, you know, much probing. Interesting is if I had planned a little better, I could have actually kind of gone forward with some Confederate infantry up into here. I could get wagons. Do I have them? I think I only have two. I could get wagons as far as here. Yeah, I wouldn't really be able to do anything coming around this side. I would be able to over here, but, you know, obviously that's where the Union started to push their weight. So there's not much I can do there. I still have a few units I haven't moved yet. I'm not quite sure what I want to do over there. It's clear weather, not hot anymore. Yeah, this is my final position for the rebels. Move to the next turn, and there's Union infantry replacement point and some Confederate. These are the guys, I can combine them with another unit, these two, and create a divisional size unit if I so desire. That might be appealing, but there are advantages to small units. But they get a strength bonus if they combine, so overall I probably want that extra strength. And I'm bringing the militia up a little bit. That's a little risky. I mean, if the Union cav ends up pushing through, I can't leave this here. But I've got a lot of time to get back to Atlanta. So I don't expect to just lose the game to that. What is possible, though, is this rail line. If the Union cav can start to position themselves where they're threatening that rail line, this whole line becomes essentially impossible. Unfortunately, the Union is not pursuing that goal. We had one fight with the cav. There was too much Confederate cav over there, and I've kind of decided, okay, I can't break through there, can't do anything too valuable, so let's use the cav a little closer in where maybe I can disrupt a withdrawal or probe something that I think might not have anything, and I can always get away. Okay, the rains start again, and the Union shifts and is digging in, which is kind of not like that, which is kind of weird because that kind of exposes where their units are, but that's okay. As far as I'm concerned, I'm willing to admit that I have at least 2 units in these 2 spaces and at least 1 here. I'm still kind of torn. Do I send 2 armies smashing into here, or do I try to rip another army down and launch an attack down here, where I can do it from here, not, but from down here. But then I have to protect my supply line all the way down, which may involve splitting up an army. All right, oops, and I forgot. I gotta allocate an infantry to the Union, and the Confederates get another one of their little brigades. And looking at the units in the field, the idea of cordoning the river, trying to defend, it's hard. It really is, because the Union could be positioning a couple of armies heading down this way. I'll see that coming, but even so, I mean, I don't have much sitting here, for example. Now, he can't reach there. You're not allowed to force march, but I don't have much here either. I'm going to have to move one of the corps to cover these 2 at the very least, and then, you know, does that weaken something else? So then it becomes kind of a shell game. Where does the Union want to launch their attack? Where do they not? Do they want to just launch attacks all along the line and see if they get a breakthrough anywhere? Because if they have the combat marker on them, as long as they're not moving closer to Atlanta, which would, the question is between these 2, is either one of them closer? But otherwise, it would be down this way. You know, I can shift my forces. So if we get, you know, kind of a breakthrough here at Calhoun, and by the way, this might be Spring Hill. It's called Springtown. You know, again, it's not clear. You end up with a lot more flexibility as the attacker than as the defender if you're trying to hold an enemy who's bigger than you. But, you know, honestly, the Union's not going to break through at any one point if they first hit with everything, unless the Confederates have a particularly weak point, you know. But I could hit a number of places. One notable thing, though, there's no bridge going across the river over here. So I got to make another move down, and that's that. All right, I'll move the ribs. Honestly, because there's no river crossing there, because I'm not in any further danger, there's no real reason for me to move much, although actually I do have to reposition 1 unit. But other than that, we're on to the next turn, and it's just the rebels getting more forces. It's wrong there as well. This is protected as well, so yeah. Basically, what we're going to have is 1 Confederate Corps here, 1 Confederate Corps, and 1 Confederate Corps split between these 2, which means the Union Army, the Tennessee, might well smash its way through. But the Union doesn't know exactly what they're going to be facing. This is what the rebels are looking at, and they're like, yeah, I don't think I can hold the line. I think I'm going to get screwed, but we'll see, you know. At the very least, we can fall. The rules to this, allowing the Confederate fallback, allow you to pull out of a position that looks difficult to hold. It's much, much harder to shift your forces along the line. You have to get that combat counter on them, and that might not be something I'm willing to do, which does sort of push forward the kind of rule support that I was looking for a reason for the Confederates to fall back. And I'm tempted to just do it anyway because, you know, I'm looking at this and I'm like, they can't hold it. But then I look further down and I say, if they can't hold it here, they're not going to hold it any further. You know, if they can't stop the Union here for long, all they're doing is giving up ground. They're not going to get enough reinforcements coming in for it to make any difference. They're not going to stop the Union unless they can do it just as well here. Heat this time, and the Union's repositioned a little bit, and yeah, it looks like it's time the Confederates are going to have to cover their flank there. And man, you know, there's just the, can I survive that attack? Well, it could come one of two places, here or here. This is better defensible, so I've got to make sure I've got this defended well. And then I've got to be careful, you know. Do I want to take the offensive? That seems like a fool's errand, but it's quite possible that the Union's left a real serious hole, you know. And where would I see that as likely? Well, any of these locations could be a hole. And that could change the whole world. If it's here, well, that could be problematic, but I could end up, mainly because that could end up cutting supply against where it looks like they're going to strike from. If it's here, that would be really a problem for the Union. But on the other hand, the Union has more forces. They're dug in pretty good terrain all across here. Here they're not in great terrain, but you know, I'd be risking my center for an attack. I just don't think I can even think about it. Which means the Union essentially has freedom to do whatever the hell they want behind their lines, because the Confederates are not going to counterattack. Heat doesn't mean much. It's sort of like a weak rain. It's it's a cost against, you know, their straggler rolls. Well, not seeing a lot of straggler checks happening. People are moving very slowly because we want to launch an attack. Right, well, you know how I make decisions based on die rolls sometimes, right? The Confederates made a die roll. I said, 1 in 6 chance I'm going to give things up. Why? Not because of any of that, hey, you know, let's try to simulate Johnston's stupidity here or something. No. It's actually got to do with the fact that I just don't have much here to defend. If that's an army, I am so fucked. Am I, though? I don't think so. I don't want to force march, in part because of the heat. And also I can't reach down there because there's no road cutting through this mountain. But what I can do is I can start to shift things over. My entrenchment, the river line, it might hold. If it doesn't, I'm on my way starting back anyway. But yeah, I ended up leaving myself a little flat-footed. I should have been moving Polk's force into range when I didn't. And I feel like a complete fucking idiot for it. So I decided to disregard that die roll. And the Confederates are pushing along. If I lose this space, I lose it. I tried to make it look a little bit heavier than this, figuring, hey, this has the better terrain. They might think I left that a little weaker. I think I'm in trouble, though. Just, you know, this is the kind of oops that makes the Johnston mistake seem maybe like less of a mistake. Because, you know, if it was me, I'd be screwing up left and right like this, right? Here's where cavalry is awesome. Coming from here, boink, boink, going in. We're going to do a probe. There's no defending cav, I think. Let me make sure. Would have been a good idea to have some here. Nope. So I get a chance to look, and I kind of hope I fail because I know what I have set up. So that's 4 points additional cav. So on a 3 or higher, I get to see a unit. It's a 6, I get to see 3 units down. 2 of those units are dummies, but 1 is Loring. Okay. Well, that's better than seeing only 2 of them, because now I know there's a good unit there. What I don't know is what's under that. However, I know that the Confederates put 2 dummies on top. They were trying to convince me there was nothing there. I don't have an additional cav to probe this and find anything about, or find out more here. Plus that's a single stack, so I'm not going to find out, you know, all the units necessarily. So I don't know which way I'm going to go. I think I'm going to still go on a die roll, basically, because if Loring is the only big unit there, well, if it's the only big unit there, what does that mean? Out of Third Corps, if this is just Third Corps down here, or Third Corps and some cav or something, this is weaker than Loring being there. So I found something that is kind of useful. I think what I'm going to do is, based on that, I am almost, we won't pull back yet. Only on a 1 will I go after that, because I do not think, I don't think I can beat this as easily as I can beat that. The terrain is just so much worse. And we don't get a 1, so we're going to push into there, which means the cav pulls back, and I'll rotate it so that I remember, because I'm going to have all my units face up when I move them. Okay, so here's the decision. I'm charging across here because, again, that's one big unit. There's not much more than that here, it's my guess. Over here I'm hitting Hood, and I did a cav probe, found some more empties, and I'm like, you know, if that's like a core, so yeah, I'll just keep grinding in. Keep some pressure up, but that means the Army of the Cumberland is spread out all along here, which, you know, this is probably the weak spot. It was really weak a little while ago, like just the supply wagon and some dummies, and that I couldn't allow to stick. I did do cav probe here. I did do cav probe over here, just kind of get a feel for the layout of the land and see what I found. And because the Confederate cav was all kind of protecting against the flank for the most part, these were all unopposed, so I found information out. Now I got me some battles, though. I'll come back after them. My first round of combat down here at Red Bud. Yeah, I'm doing them one at a time. The Confederates held pretty well against a diversionary attack. Crossing the river is very painful. And the Army of the Ohio is not really capable of doing this. I forgot. I had the Cumberland mixed in with the Ohio when I was battering up at even before. I'm not that good anymore. And yeah, because I had 3 wings filled, whatever. But these guys are halved in strength coming across the river. And this was a bad move. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm not going to fight the second round. I took 2 hits in the first round. Oh, I forgot to mark them. I marked them here, but I forgot them over there. But the question is whether the Confederates want to come running out and attack these guys on their way back. Because these are still halved because they crossed, right? Or is it just the attacker? No, it's only attacker. Yeah. So yeah, I'll let them get away. I won't be able to press them against the river and cause them any real problem. If they had stumbled into something bigger than them, naturally bigger, they would have had problems. But it's only halved if you're attacking. So yeah, we'll let them out of there. On here, things are totally different, though. The Union crosses, and they find almost nothing there. Now, they went with a diversionary attack because I'm sitting here with McPherson, who, unless he's facing, oh, geez, now I can't remember. Not Huger. Magruder, is it? I don't know. Who is it down here? Hardy. Yeah. Unless he's facing Hardy, he's gonna be the better commander against Hood, against Polk. I haven't killed off a Confederate commander. Well, that diversionary attack, I think the Confederates got kind of lucky. They got away without taking any damage. They actually caused a point of damage to the Union crossing. The Union could say, screw it, I'm done. And because they have a better leader, they could sit here, and that has just undermined the Confederate position. The Confederates would have to do something about it, even if it's, you know, whatever it is. And they probably would have been better off pulling out earlier. Should have followed that die roll out. I couldn't have gotten very much further than I did. And I would have had the Union chasing on my heels anyway. So now I have to be around for another round of battle. And the question is, you know, do I want to go with a withdrawal? Well, the problem with withdrawal is you end up taking straggler losses, etc. I'm going to stay with a stand, but the Union wants to wipe these fuckers out because they're bloody-minded. Ended up being 2 strength points on each. I don't have to destroy the Confederates, though, again, because I have McPherson there. I actually had a potential problem, but I just missed it. Both sides took 2 casualties. That includes the one additional one for the trench, so we're not really changing the victory point levels, but the Union gets to stay there, and these guys are pretty weak. I probably shouldn't have gone for that second round, and certainly not with the assault, because I was chancing taking losses for McPherson and for Polk, neither of which I want to see dead as the Union. And with the line broken, we see the Confederates pulling back. Now I'm holding this position. Why? Because it's too hard to get enough army to cover both of these spaces. So it was just kind of a, yeah, I gotta sacrifice some of Polk's corps to fight on that line a little bit longer. And there's other risks too, but the Union's not going to come charging down, you know, force marching into battle. That's as bad as River. Yes, it's a slightly better situation, but I'd rather follow them, you know, carefully. But yeah, I'm definitely going to keep fighting here. Without the river penalty, I'm in pretty good shape. Some of the units will be fording, though. Now, I think, not absolutely certain, but I think there's an exemption where these guys are considered to be able to cross at the bridgehead, and which actually matters. There are some real strength points in there. I will have to look that up, though. But yeah, we're... and here's another thing. Okay, so there's enough Confederates here that I can't just press through. But I can push up here and avoid fighting here and keep putting a pressure on them. I don't know that I'd want to do that. We'll see. And I'm wrong. The units that come from here would still be halved. The only exemption they have is they're not forced back, which they wouldn't be anyway because of the leadership advantage that's in play. Ooh, that's going to make it harder. So the Union is following the Confederates in multiple places. Some reinforcements here, some fording action. Firepower there ended up resulting in a grand total of 3 Confederate losses, and that's almost caught the Union up in victory points. Meanwhile, I kind of screwed up with the Confederates. That's okay. I've been screwing up with both sides. They probably should have picked a withdrawal option here because, well, the problem with withdrawal, I face the same thing as a forced march. I'm going to have to take a straggle check. But if I was going to take it, I might as well have lowered the combat intensity, which didn't hurt me at all. There was some chance that the Union would up the combat intensity and take some damage from that. But so I don't know if it does much, but I had to kind of stand around. But I got to deal more damage by doing it this way, I guess, or more potential damage. I actually did 0 damage because I'm firing down in this range now, where the Union's still up in here. So depending on whether or not, because McPherson has the firepower advantage, he gets a shift. This march or the withdrawal is necessary because I need to be able to move 2 spaces. The problem with the force march rather than the withdrawal is I can't pull back to this space. Do I really want to be there? It's not that big a deal. That's not where my line's going to be. My line's going to be back here. But it would have provided me with a little extra defense, but I can't force march across the river, so the withdrawal would have been a little bit more valuable. That's okay. But I do need to do one of those 2 because I need a 2-space with retreat. If I don't take a 2-space retreat, what happens is the Union can just keep attacking, pushing against me, unless of course I'm crossing the river. Then I gain something from it. But it'll be worse than that because I'll be giving up my entrenchments. So when you withdraw from combat, you really kind of want to run far if you're being beaten up by the enemy. And here's the Confederates pulling back. Some Cav screening in the background. I'm not too worried about these guys pressing their attack by 2 hexes, but I am worried about him possibly force marching through here, assuming there's nothing here, which there is. On the other hand, that kind of force march is just not possible. The Union isn't going to have its supply wagons in range there. It's got to clear the entire rail net down to where it can get its supply. So there's no real chance of pursuit that far down. Actually, this may not even be a viable place. The Union could, though, come around this way if I'm not holding this space. The problem with that space, it's divided by this little bit of river. So I won't be able to shift troops back and forth across here easily. So the terrain puts me in an interesting position where I kind of want to defend these two, but without a crossing space, well, I do have one back here, which helps. Without a crossing space right here, I may end up with 2 separate segmented commands that are difficult to realign, so the entire Union force could go against one of them without it being a problem. Of course, the only really important one is this one. It's the rail net that has to be kept. If I get in here, sure, I can move my supply wagon there. I don't have to protect it because the river's not crossable. Put another supply wagon here and then come around here, and that forces a fallback towards the Chattahoochee. I'll never get used to these names, the Indian names, but you know, they're our butchery of them. Anyway, that pushes us another turn, and I had gotten up stupidly early this morning. And I have this stupid online video game that I should be up at like 2 in the morning, between 2 and 6 in the morning, and it's kind of a horrible thing. And no, you don't want to know what it is, and I'm not going to tell you. I usually generally take the games I'm playing kind of a little maybe too much for granted, but here we saw something really pretty. Some Confederate Cav here, and I don't know if there's 2 units or a dummy there. Got scouted. I know there's something there. I had to divert some part of the Army of the Cumberland into play there to help root that out. If that's got an infantry division there, I need a fair amount of force, so I put quite a bit in there actually. And I should probably have a leader there, so if I have not put a leader, that's probably more valuable. Yeah, I'm good. That's probably more valuable than anything else. And these other Cav here, hey, I have to scare them out, so I moved more of the Army of the Cumberland. Now I know I'm only dealing with Cav here, so a decent amount of Cav and some infantry, they're going to go. You know, it's just a matter of where they run. But from here, because of this unit, because of the supply lines, etc., I had to make sure that I take this space, not this space. Now, this space is probably not very well defended, but I can't go riding off in this direction, basically, because of where the supply wagons are. And, yeah, there's a crossing there. So I can move Sherman down as well. He was just lost up there. But yeah, I mean, this was kind of exciting to me to see the way the interaction worked where, you know what, I don't have the option to just keep moving. Where often with this game, it just feels like, you know, hey, I can always just move forward. The supply limits to this particular scenario, in conjunction with the command rules, etc., meant that I could not do some of the stuff that is more often possible in under the system. Just an interesting observation. So the Union Cav could have intercepted either of those withdrawals before combat, but the problem is that doesn't bring the infantry into play. So I would rather let the Confederates peel away. Here, I don't know if it's, you know, 2 Cav units that I'm facing, and here I knew it was 2. My odds were just not good enough. I had like 12 cav strength points to the Confederates 4. No, I'm sorry, 7. Which means I don't have 2 to 1. Because of the terrain, it probably means I'm not going to come out that well out of it. So I'd rather just let them go, not trade losses at bad odds, because it's the infantry that matters in the end. So pinning down the cav, trying to destroy it, doesn't make much sense. Now, here, I'm not quite sure what happens. I launched this attack first, or declared it first. The cav retreated from combat. I think they can retreat from this one too. I probably should have done it in the other order. In fact, I am going to do that. I'm going to leave these guys here. I am not going to intercept, but I'm going to declare battles in both these spaces. If I declare battle here first, the Confederate cav will have to retreat somewhere else, and they might have some trouble doing so. They might end up somewhere I don't... Well, they might actually end up behind my lines, which I really don't particularly want. But if I can tie them down with a couple of my cav, then I'm more open to advances, I think. I'm not sure. I don't know which way that's going to go. You know what? I'm going to let these guys withdraw before combat instead. Because I don't want them ranging around in my back areas. And that was my initial impression. But here we have the Army of the Tennessee hitting a different, fresher Confederate corps. I'm not sure of that. It's the 1st Corps, which has not been too heavily involved. Well, it's Hardee. He took some blooding, but, you know, the 3rd Corps is weak to begin with, and the 2nd Corps has taken a lot of hits. Hood, who's over here. So, you know, the Confederate Army is beginning to wear down and get close to being ineffective, which then means I really probably can't hold the line much of anywhere. These are real Confederate units here, and as I said, it's a corps. We set up, the Confederates are going to withdraw, which is no big shock, but the Union was terrified that they'd make a stand here. They don't want to lose the extra strength point because it is defensive terrain. Actually, maybe, Jesus, I don't know. I think that's ridgeline, the rough. Okay, so it's rough terrain. So I was particularly worried that I'm going to be on the 1-to-1 or the 1-to-1 chart. And so I want to keep the combat intensity level at 1. But the Confederates do not want to be standing out here. They want to get behind that river line. Yes, they could try to make a stand on the rough, but the Union will find weak spots on it. And the way the rail line goes, I need to get over that river. So I think both sides made reasonable choices. But I actually think the Union's going to choose this attack first, which they have McPherson involved in, and the Confederates do not have a leader. So the nice thing for the Confederates is they're withdrawing, so they only have to stand 1 round of combat, so they're less likely to take more effects. I want to get some entrenchments built wherever I'm going to defend as soon as I can. But yeah, the Union's being ultra cautious here under McPherson. He usually shouldn't be that way. Here's something to keep in mind. If you're withdrawing from combat, put everything in one wing, because there's a modifier of a column to the right for firing on a wing that's adjacent to another wing with the withdrawal position, because the difficulty of withdrawing units without exposing flanks, etc. It seems a little odd when both wings are withdrawing, but yeah, it's just as painful. Whereas just withdrawing doesn't really hurt you. So I'm going to have to pay the price for that. And in this case, we're looking at both sides are way up there in strength. The Confederates, because they're doubled from the rough terrain, have a decent strength still. But the Union has a shift for leadership in this round, and another shift, but that doesn't help. And we'll just roll the dice for this one, just because. So the Union did 1, the Confederates did 1, and I'll record those, because that's the end of the round for those guys. The net effect was even. Both sides basically lost 1 strength point in each location, had the Confederates stood, they probably could have caused more damage and then still withdrawn. The big pain was they took massive straggler hits off of this. You can see Walker and Bates each took like, you know, a third of the unit in stragglers. So it's going to take me some time to recover. Now, I use these straggler loss markers. I'm not sure how they're specifically supposed to be used. I use them more as a mnemonic device to like remind me, yeah, this is a force that I may want to be recovering stragglers with, so I should be thinking about it. The problem that I have with them is that they give information to the enemy about this is a real unit, and this is the same thing with the ineffective units. This is a real unit, and you know, it's not a strength point counter that I would just be putting out in the battle so I can count or whatever. Not that that's terribly helpful. I find writing things down just as easy. But it's also, you know, it's just giving information that should not be available to the enemy the way I conceive of this design. So I'm not sure why they're included, to tell you the truth. But given that they're there, I'm using them to help me a little bit. I mean, I don't care that the Union knows that that's real. To some extent, if I walk away between turns, that's actually helpful, because the Union should know that that's where I withdrew to. They saw me do it. There was one thing I wanted to mention about the game that I hadn't, which is that the rules to each of these, so the core rules are the same, obviously, it's a series, but the scenario rules tend to be fairly different. And some of that has to do with the specifics of a campaign. That's fine. You know, like, are there gunboats there? Well, we don't really need gunboat rules in all of it, but you know, a fair number of the scenarios have them. But that's okay. And they have different ones, which feels a little weird. Basically, the designer of a particular game within the system says, I think this is how we should handle the gunboats, instead of this is just how gunboats work. You know, they're close, but they're not exact. But similarly, you know, when you start adding things like the Confederate Special Retreat rule here and stuff like that, you're beginning to, and the supply rules, you're beginning to start looking at stuff that I feel should be series rules that, you know, should pretty much cover most games in the system. And it kind of reminds me of the way Sicily Race to Messina kind of added so much on to what was kind of a simple system. That's on my mind because, well, I don't have it up here, because I'm looking at another Dick Rustin game. He did that one and just added so much chrome to what was kind of a kind of vanilla system with one neat little idea, which became the variable combat system. Strangely enough, they took the Sicily rules and worked with those more or less. But here, yeah, it just feels like each game is almost its own very different game. Now, the core system is different enough from what you kind of expect in war games that I'm okay with this. It's kind of like, you know, if you looked at your standard operational game, well, basically I would compare this to a system like Standard Combat System, where there's a fair amount of variability in how the system handles specific scenarios. And sometimes it's way out there, you know, like they're not using the same combat charts and stuff like that between games in the series. And I find that interesting, but it makes me feel like that's not a series, because the stuff that's in the series rules is really kind of, hey, here's Wargaming 101. You would say the same about this, except the core system for this is not Wargaming 101. The core system for this is, you know, area movement, hidden counters, all kind of stuff like that. So it's kind of like, you know, like the block games are, in terms of just being so different from your standard hex and counter rules. And it makes a little more sense to me than something like the standard combat system, which I really kind of harp on about. Geez, this really isn't a system at all. In a way, this isn't either. All the games in it are American Civil War. Would they have to be? Not with the amount of variance that they put in. You know, you could probably go to the Mexican War or maybe even World War I stuff. You know, you'd have to add a lot to it and change, you know, maybe override some rules. But, you know, when things like supply aren't core to the rule, when instead you have this command and control thing that kind of usually assimilates the supply rules, and then now they say, well, yeah, but that's not enough for this scenario. The territory is so big, the time scales are so large that you really need more than that. Yeah, okay. For the Confederate side of the turn, pulling back a little bit. I can get rid of this. The Union doesn't need it anymore. And here, let's get Johnston back here. We have, and actually, why don't I do something a little bit more reasonable? I find some of my dummies and throw them back here so that it's not clear how much of my force. Well, I'll do that in a moment. Don't worry about it. There's going to be some dummies here. I spread dummies out where it's pretty obvious they're not real. What's happening here is everybody, I had a couple units that couldn't even move. So I just decided to dig in with everything. I could conceivably have thrown one unit behind the river line to dig in. Because you see, if the Union force marches to here and attacks me, I'm going to have trouble getting dug in there. But I can withdraw first and dig in my turn. Take the additional straggler losses. So that's not really horrible that I'm doing this. And I didn't want to take take Polk's command apart further than I already have. So, and here we've got Hood kind of holding the rear guard. If the Union wants to come charging into him in rough terrain, they can. And this is pretty much entirely protected. So now the question really lies as to, you know, how my different commands are going to dig themselves in, where they're going to place. One thing that's good about militia is it is allowed to dig in. So, yeah, makes sense. They should be allowed to do back-breaking work. Oops, forgot these guys. Okay, so the interesting thing with these guys is where they're going, whether they want to catch up with Third Corps. And you know what? I'm going to take my chances on straggling with them, actually. Yeah, no, I don't usually show you everything. This video is almost done. So that first one's going to force march, and he's going to take a straggler loss. That's Quarles. And I'll put one of these on just to remind me. He's not very big. There he is. And now what's this other one? This other one's probably heading up there. Yeah, this is First Corps, Mercer. I'll march him as well. Just see. You know, chances are I'm going to take straggler losses and it's not worth the force march. I could take 2 straggler losses and it's really not worth it. But I'm kind of in a hurry to get up to that line. And that's 1, which is fine. There's more of a chance that I'll take none, so, you know, you get a slight advantage, slight possible advantage of being able to move faster. But anyway. All right, and I think we send this one off.